And I realized I'm like reading on my phone at like 11 p.m. and I'm like, I need to go to sleep. What am I doing with my life?
Hi, I'm Geoff Weisenberger, editor and publisher of Modern Steel Construction, the monthly magazine of AISC, and with me are John Schuepbach, the chair of the AISC Safety Committee, as well as the coordinator of SafetyCon here at NASCC, the Steel Conference, and then also Ben Thornburg, who is the safety manager with Drake Williams Steel in Omaha. And Ben will be speaking on AI and safety on Friday in the session Intelligent Safety Embracing AI for Safety Management. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about the convergence of AI and safety. We've all heard of AI. I think we all think we have an idea of what it's about, but maybe let's just talk a little bit about, let's start from the beginning and talk about where it enters your world. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the first time that AI you saw it as not just a tool, but maybe a solution to a specific problem? Something that you were facing maybe at work in safety management. What was the problem and how did AI, help solve the problem?
Honestly, the first time I used AI to what I think it showed its benefit to me was not even work related. I was kind of treating it like Google for a lot of the stuff. I was like, I know it exists, but I hadn't really taken a creative approach to it or thought much of it. And it wasn't until I was trying to figure out some landscaping fabric we're growing some flowers. We needed to cut holes at certain distances to where we could fit as many flowers as we could, but still have the proper spacing. And it would just run through the calculations for me. And I was like, what if we did a staggered grid instead of a triangle? And it would give me the numbers. And that's when it kind of clicked with me of like, wow, yeah, this is definitely not Google. This is like something else.
Very good. So it didn't actually dig the holes for you, though, did it? For the
No,
flowers?
unfortunately, I did that.
All right. It's still in its infancy at this point.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. I just out of curiosity, so when you started putting together the team at work, were there people kind of chomping at the bit, or were people pretty apprehensive?
And so it kind of started, honestly, with just a couple conversations with some directors of like, hey, we were wanting to do a conversation at the Steel Conference about it. Are you guys thinking about this too? And they had been already, and it was more of a small group, small team, natural progression of, all right, before we can get any further with learning about the systems, let's dabble in it. Let's use what's available through like ChatGPT with just the free version, the 3.5, to see what can it do. It wasn't like a survey. Who wants to be a part of the AI team or anything like that? Because I mean, there's just so many unknowns, and with any other company, the caution with it is, some people may have access to certain file servers somewhere in your organization. We don't want just this blanket thing of, hey, hop on ChatGPT and give it our income statement and see what it tells us type of deal. Smaller team, but not a small mindset, I guess, trying to just leave the door open to test it, but not leave the door open for everybody.
Sure, that makes sense. Well, speaking of first steps, were there any stumbles, were there any big hurdles at the beginning?
It's really figuring out how to use it, what questions to ask. Like I said, when I first started, I downloaded ChatGPT on my phone. I was just using the app, and I would just treat it as Google. And that's the biggest hurdle, I think, to get over and continuously try to remember that it's there, is not using it like a system we've used in the past. It's a new thing, a lot of unknowns about it. Don't think you know certain things, and it's hard to get into that because you're like, I have such a pointed topic I want to ask this thing, and you get to it and you're like, well, what do I ask it? I don't know what to ask it. And it was getting to that hurdle to realize, sometimes the best option is just asking it what it can do for you, and then you let that frame your questions beyond that, because obviously it has way more training and data than I've ever looked at or analyzed. So I'm going to let it tell me what it can do for me, and then I'm just going to walk along with it.
Sure. I mean, yeah, on that note, just like on a day-to-day sort of basis, What can you give an example of something, what you've been doing with it, or can you maybe give an example of some sort of before and after type of scenario where, before AI you used AI and this is how it worked afterwards? I mean, the flowers are a great example, but say something at the fabrication shop.
I'm going to do a couple examples on the screen here if you'd like to just see a couple before and afters, and I could talk through what I normally do versus what I do now.
Sure, that'd be fine.
Cool. So I asked it to analyze the attached PDF. Please tell me what you can do for me after analyzing the information. It responds back, based on the analysis of the attached PDF, which, mind you, that was like, 5 seconds. It's a 270-page document. This document is an extensive guide detailing the training requirements. So I asked it a pretty vague question just because I didn't want to lead it down a certain path. I'd rather it tell me what it can do because it's way smarter than I am. Number one, it can provide a compliance guide used as a comprehensive reference. Training development, you can utilize a document to develop and enhance your safety training. Safety program development, offer basis for reviewing. Employee engagement, regulatory updates, resource for safety meetings. That's all well and good. All right, so that kind of gave me some ideas maybe. So I'm going to just go into point number 4. It brought up employee engagement. Mm-hmm. Well, that kind of piques my interest. I want you to help me out with that. So I'm going to maybe say create an engaging discussion based on the first 3 training requirements. Can't spell. Listed in the PDF that you analyzed. And we'll see where it goes from there. I've spent some time where I try to drill down my prompt way too much, and I just kind of, I throttle its abilities too much. So based on that question, it's going to start feeding me stuff.
But it's funny because you said engaging, but I mean, we know what that means, but it's a subjective word. It's like, could you say, like, it could, let's say it gives you whatever it gives you. Could you say not engaging enough?
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful question. To my landscape fabric, I'll let it finish talking to me really quick, but to my landscape fabric thing I brought up earlier, when I first typed in my question about where to put my holes and what figure or pattern to put it in, I used the word efficient. Said, what's the most efficient pattern to use? It took that as efficient for me, making the holes. I meant efficient as in, fit as many pieces or many holes on that fabric. And so it gave me a number that was low. And we had kind of already started doing the math by hand. We're like, well, that's not right. I think we can get way more. And so that's where prompt, the wording you use, is a beautiful point.
Man. Yeah.
So if I say, I'm going to drill down specifically, I'm going to just go with point number 2, fire prevention plans. So it gave me fire prevention plans, 29 CFR 1910.39, innovative approaches to fire prevention in the steel industry. It knows steel industry because I've got in my profile just some little notes about myself, what I do for work. Focus on the fire prevention plans topic. And what did you say you want to say? Not engaging enough. Try again.
Yeah, something like that. Just, yeah.
So I could ask it that.
Please be more engaging.
Yeah, not engaging enough. Please be more engaging. If I ask it that, I'm basically, it's like, in a way, defining a word with the word in the definition. So it's going to continue to do maybe what it just did over and over and over again the more I ask it. So if I say, not engaging enough, please be more engaging, what do I mean by that? I want to expand to your point a little bit on what my definition of engaging is. So I'm going to just provide some, here's a small little bit of context. Write it as if the speaker is discussing the topic with a group of insomniacs. Right. So then
it's gonna go pretty long then.
Right. All right, let's dive into the world of fire prevention. And trust me, it's going to be so engaging that even a group of insomniacs would nod off.
Oh, man.
Picture this. You're surrounded, right? So now it's bringing in some visualization techniques to kind of keep them engaged. My friends, we're fire prevention.
I'll write a screenplay with this.
Right. and it's going to generate a Word doc for you that you can download. Taking it to the even next level, I'm going to open up and I'm going to talk to it, and this is the voice feature with ChatGPT on my phone. But if I open up and I say, hey, we have an employee that only speaks Spanish. We're doing a toolbox meeting on fire prevention plans. Could you please provide a short recap of fire prevention plans and speak in Spanish so that they can understand you?
Estos planes incluyen identificar los riesgos de incendio, educar a los empleados sobre cómo evitarlos y establecer procedimientos de emergencia en caso de incendio.
So, I mean, it'll do that, but it types it out for you. So then I was kind of, I set that one up for myself. I tested that last night just to see if I was able to do it. But then I also asked it, I don't speak Spanish. I don't know what you just said. Can you translate that back to English so I know what you just covered? And it broke it down for me.
Yeah.
And the example I did last night in my bed at like 11 p.m. was it talked through NFPA acronym of PASS. And I was like, whoa, cool. I didn't give it anything other than last night I asked it to talk about fire extinguishers. It was insane. Bigger example, if I pull up my, I pull up this is a barrel dumper manual. I just downloaded it from online. I'd read through that manual if I want to create like a Preshift checklist that employees can complete to make sure that thing is in working order before they begin to use it. I'd read through that manual, find the key points. Manufacturers oftentimes do a great job of sometimes including a checklist in the manual for you, but if they don't, then you kind of got to finger through it all and figure out what's important, what's too in-depth, whatnot, put them into yes-no questions, however I want to do it. But instead, if I say, provide a list of 10 questions that an employee can go through to make sure that the equipment is in good working order prior to use.
So you could almost make like a quiz for them.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. Or just, hey, it's going to review the manual, and it's going to say, from these portions, here's 10 questions. And it's going to start off however the manual is framed, because it's going to read through every single bit of text and reference and say, well, step one, is the area secure or clean around it? Is the case or hardware in good working order? Is there anything missing? Step two, control and pendant. Check the control pendant, and then so on and so forth. And so before, I'd spend a hot minute trying to, find the manual potentially, and then skim through it, see what I can find, make sure I capture the important stuff so that we're actually checking the things that are critical for its use, and then put that in a checklist, get it reviewed with everybody, make sure it's specific enough but not too specific, and then put it out for the world to see and use. Instead, I ask my friend here to help me out. And even if it's just an outline, if it's like, hey, those are good questions, but those are pretty vague because it's just from the manual. All right, well, now comes the human factor, human touch of, all right, well, I'm going to add in my specific information.
Sure. Is one of the differences between the different versions, by the way, like the pay version and the 3.5 and 4, is it speed or is it just like robustness? Like what would make somebody want to pay the monthly fee, so to speak?
Right. It might be faster, but it's it's more so the depth of its response. So think of it like an example I heard on a podcast recently was like, think of it as you asking your friend who somehow knows like everything, a question about, I skinned my knee, what should I do? And he's going to tell you anything and everything, and it's probably going to be decent information, but it's not very specific, and he might give you a misstep. Whereas if you ask your friend that's a doctor, they're gonna, well, all right, cool, let's break this down. What happened exactly, or what is it looking like, how deep, what have you used already? It's just gonna give you a way more specific answer.
Sure.
How do you go, back to your example here, how do you go from something vague to something specific that you're trying to, because if you start with something, as we were talking earlier, you start with something that's vague and you're trying to drill down to get that specific answer. How do you start, and then what's the progression of the prompts that you're using to get to something specific?
If I take an incident report and I say, it's got different columns, it's an Excel doc, it's got different columns, and I specifically want to know, I want to try to find some correlation between times of incidents and types of incidents, what they involved. Right out of the gate, that's a great point, John. Like, what I did do in the past is ask it just point blank. Here's this document, find correlation between times of incidents and types. And it sometimes would provide me what I wanted, and sometimes it might say, I can't understand the data in your your Excel doc. You might need to look at it or something like that, because it's taking this entire big document that I'm giving it, and then it's going off of like my specific, probably worded incorrectly prompt to try to get done what I'm asking it to get done. Versus if I give it that Excel doc and say, this is an incident report that covers from January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022. It includes dates and types, and then a brief note about what exactly happened. What can you do with this information? You've given it a chance, at least in my mind, you've given it a chance to frame this conversation as, all right, we're looking at an incident report. All right, and it's gonna then provide a list of what it can do of, well, I could analyze the types, I could analyze the frequency, I could analyze what times they're happening. You say, all right, thanks for those options. If I don't see what I want on that list, don't just start a new chat or close it and be like, it didn't tell me what I wanted. Like you said, you have to continue down and keep drilling it down. Just like you gave the example earlier of like, if you could ask Einstein a question, or if he's in the room with you, it's like asking him, hey, explain everything to me. You're not gonna get to where you want to get. You ask a specific pointed question towards a certain thing, and it's going to continue to funnel that conversation on and on and on until you just start drilling down to the nitty gritty, and it's like, holy crap, yeah, this is exactly what I wanted from this conversation.
So another example from a safety side, how did you start the conversation, vague like that, and then, other than correlating the data from an incident report over some time, is there another instance that you used, you had some objective or some problem that you're looking for an answer to, safety related, and then how did you start, I'm guessing you started vague and then drilled down in this conversation. Can you give some example of what was that safety related topic, that objective you're trying to do, and then how did you proceed through to find the answer or produce the answer?
Right. Honestly, like I kind of said earlier, I try to channel, so I have a 3-year-old daughter. I try to channel all of the questions that she asks me, and I'm gonna ask it somewhat in that same way. Somehow she asks the most specific questions, but they're also the most broad questions at the same time. And it
3-year-olds are amazing like that, yeah.
It perplexes the crap out of me, and I'm like, I don't know, dude. I try to give it that same question in a way. What are your thoughts as if you were a safety professional, or as if you were an environmental health and safety manager, and then kind of explain yourself to give it the context of, well, who's asking the question? Because that's going to change the quality and depth of what I'm going to give you. If I say, explain it as if you were a 10-year-old, it's going to do it. It's going to do a great job explaining it as a 10-year-old. But changing that level so it knows who it's interacting with is going to change the degree.
Some people might think of it as Google and it's not. I mean, and you've illustrated why, like the difference between the two, but it's also, you made a good point that it might not be, might not need it for everything. There are certain things where it's perfectly still going to be fine to just say, hey, Google, whatever, I need one answer. Or just like a brief answer. This, is clearly,
Right.
Obviously, I think a lot of people think about AI, or think about AI for mundane tasks or busy work or what have you. I hear a lot of people use the example of putting together a resume. To kind of like those, like, I want, hey, ChatGPT, here's my information. Can you make a really good resume with the keywords and et cetera, et cetera? But like, in your use so far, have you, besides just it coming back with useful information, has it ever surprised you in any way? Like, is it like unexpectedly giving you something that's way above and beyond what you were expecting in terms of your results or a solution?
That's kind of the fun part. I had asked it to find, I gave it the same thing. I gave it an incident report that had a year's worth of incidents, and I gave it a year's worth of hours worked, broken down by week. I was like, find some correlation here. Like, there's got to be. If we work more hours, we have more incidents, or maybe it's the opposite of that. Maybe the less we work, the more incidents we have because everybody's bored. It couldn't find any. It was like, it really is all over the board. But it's not just passive in the way that I analyzed it. What else do you want from me? Where it continually blows my mind every single day is that, so to your question, you don't realize it in the moment, but it blows your mind every single time it gives you an answer, because it doesn't just give you an answer, it goes, and then, but wait, there's more, right? It'll say, I didn't find correlations with hours worked and incident rates. What you could look at though, and then it listed out 4 things. It was like, take in seasonal information. Depending on where you're working and your work schedule, based on the seasons, it appears that August was doing something, this and that. And then, hey, maybe don't look at, do you have a different report that doesn't just look at total hours worked? Maybe look at your actual schedule to see when most of the hours were worked in a really condensed time frame instead of just total hours worked for the week or for the month. And then even into like 2 or 3 other things that I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I think we actually have data on that. I'm going to pull a report really quick. So it doesn't necessarily blow your mind in some of those cases, but it should in a way, because it just got you to think completely differently about a situation, whereas normally you're kind of at a loss for what to ask it.
Sure. It's making you think of things that you wouldn't have thought of yourself, and it's making you think out of the box, or whatever your current box is. It's pretty cool. When it comes to like navigating the data minefield, in terms of like security and sensitive information, what are some of the considerations that like for like for Drake Williams, for example?
Yeah,
Can it be misused, I guess?
I mean, it's such like a ambiguous thing in a way, because it's like we know that it can be like misused and taken advantage of. How exactly? I'm sure there's a lot of experts out there that can answer that question.
Sure.
But like
you said you weren't the expert. Okay.
We get it. You're dumb.
No.
It's kind of. I mean, just think about like we get our minds blown when I need a certain fitting for under the sink. I barely know what I'm doing with plumbing, but I look up one fitting on Home Depot's website or something, and then all of a sudden for the next week, that's all I see on my Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Is true. Just all of a sudden I own a plumbing business. I need to buy all of these different fittings. I need to learn how to swage. I need to know how to do this and that. And that torch looks cool. I'm going to use that. It's in that same light where companies are using data to then reinforced by our search habits and to give us ads so that we buy their stuff or lead us to certain thoughts or processes. It's could be viewed in the same way of like, nobody would have thought that with the invention of the internet and websites that eventually every click and stroke you make with your mouse is going to be mapped, and they're going to use that to sell you more things or sell you different things or give you a discount when you didn't think there was one. So it's pumping the brakes a little bit, even from these free cases like we're looking at with ChatGPT 3.5. Like, I mean, that's usually the first red flag is if the service is free, you're the product type of deal. And so realizing the basics, I mean, if I want to figure out a way to make a return to work plan, for example, I'm going to give it a job description, and I'm going to give it the restrictions that the employee had. Am I going to give it our job description document from our policies? No, I'm going to remove some stuff on it. Am I going to give it the doctor's note that the employee got that states the restrictions? Absolutely not. I'm going to look at the restrictions and then manually type those in, so it has nothing to do with the employee, the doctor, or anything like that. So it's from a basic level, it's, you know, taking into account all the current regulations associated with personal information and applying that here. And that's why it can be dangerous, especially with these open source ones. Is anybody has access to it. So if they have access to documents that they don't necessarily know your organization has as sensitive documents, as an organization coming together early, like right now, if you haven't already, and establishing policies, guidelines, ethics boards to say, you know, at no time are we going to allow AI to be open on, you know, a shop computer or something like that, or on a shop tablet. We need to blacklist those websites. You can't open them up.
If we could, let's circle back to, you know, you got a great example here of the return to work. You know, you have an incident report, you have a doctor's note, and then if you were to use those with AI, and you get this product back, how do you verify that makes sense? I mean, what do you use to, you know, what's the process, I guess, that's the way to think about it. What's the process to verify that, hey, this document that I have back makes sense?
If I don't have a program to compare that to say, well, the things ChatGPT just gave me, say he can or they can do this, this, and this, I can't, is that true? Is it not? That's when it comes into, you know, don't let your AI system, whether it's integrated into your organization's servers or not, or if it's just ChatGPT, stay out of the mindset of it's not a decision maker. It's an informer to help guide you in making those decisions, but you should not take it and make a decision with that information. So you could always, the first step, you could plug it back in to ChatGPT, or take what ChatGPT gives you, and if you have Microsoft Copilot, feed it into Microsoft Copilot and ask it, can you provide references to verify that this information is accurate and true? And it's going to do its best. But once again, we're now using AI to critique AI, and Microsoft Copilot actually uses ChatGPT's model to do its stuff. So now it's like, well, it's just verifying itself. So stepping back then at that point to say, all right, I've reached the limitations that I feel comfortable using ChatGPT for. I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to call a workplace physician. If I were to ask it, so just as an example, provide a 500-word discussion guide for a toolbox meeting about powered industrial, if I can spell, trucks. So I'm going to ask it just a quick little discussion guide. And it's going to start giving me my stuff. And what's cool is that I didn't even ask it to say how many words are in each subject line or category, but it went ahead and did that for me. So it's coming up with an introduction. What are we talking about? And then operational safety standards. And then continuing on. And then if I'm like, dang, that's pretty good, I print it off and hand it to some guy. How do I know did he just pull that from like a bunk website or something? And we're gonna misspeak and have guys doing exactly what they're not supposed to be doing. So I let it finish answering the question. Sometimes it really just kind of keeps going and going and going, and you can ask it to stop. And then I'm gonna go ahead and take a look and say, well, I didn't see a single reference in there. I'm going to say something like, critique the response you just provided, revise it to include regulatory standards for each line item that references a standard. So kind of put it back through its paces to say, I like what you gave me, but I'd rather have some stuff with references tied to it.
Sure.
So then I can either go back in and check the 29 CFR 1910.178 and say, all right, yeah, everything it's saying that matches up. There's no misinformation in here. Or I could ask it to even go further. Don't just give me a reference for each line item you made. Give me each line item, or give me each reference that you're calling out, and then make a line item from that, so that you know it's sourcing it from exactly where you want it to be sourced from. And so that's just one of a couple different ways to verify accurate information is being given to you, so you can feel comfortable going to the next step.
Sure. This brings up another question. So you have, everybody has their own account, whether it's the free version or if it's the paid version. If you have, I mean, I understand if you have questions that refer to specific documents you've already referred to or fed into it, that's one thing. But if you are just to ask it basic questions, but I do that and then you do it the exact same way, is it going to give us both the exact same answer, or is it going to depend on questions you've already asked it before?
Yeah, no, it's probably not going to give you the same answer. I mean, I've even asked it in different chats within my same account the exact same question with the same document I'd given it before. And it might tell you, I can't do that. Given my current limitations, I'm unable to review or analyze this information. And so it kind of plays into the importance of how many users are on it, what data is it getting.
Well, let's ask another question here. So you're getting this response from this. Let's talk a little bit about how the interaction, because it's still a human, right? You know, we have this worker that we need to get a return to work policy from. The worker doesn't see this. How do you use that? And then the human to human element of this. Walk us through a little bit of that. How are you going to actually work with that person and interact with that person based on the information you've been given?
Right. So with this example of the return to work stuff, or toolbox topic generation or anything, but with the return to work stuff, the user, as in the employee, does not interact with it in this case. In this case, it's used more so as a tool from a support services or HR or safety team aspect to increase efficiency, to help establish or guide you through and work to establish a return to work program as a whole. So while you might not take exactly what it says and put it directly into a program and say, all right, we generated based on any variable whatsoever for any of our jobs, we now have an answer for it. And then you might not do that, and you also probably don't want to have it generate based on the restrictions given and their job description, then send like an automatic email to the employee that says, hello, I'm Jane Doe, I'm your virtual assistant. You've been assigned these restrictions or these accommodations, report to work, and you have to sit in this chair over there and you're gonna do this. But that's where the human to human interaction would come into play more at that point.
I mean, you talked a little bit earlier about how you kind of put together a team, so to speak, to kind of explore things and get rolling with it. What's the current status of AI at Drake Williams? I mean, is this like being implemented company-wide? Do you have like a phased sort of implementation at this point, or is it still a little bit early for that?
It's not company-wide. We're still operating under the guidelines that we'd kind of established as a learning team, which is focused around ethics, data privacy, and just overall caution. So keeping it within that learning team and continuing to figure out applications. And where that is hopefully then leading us isn't to figure out like what AI model we can use that'll work best with it, or figure out, well, where can we apply it that it's going to work the best? Do we give it to our production supervisors so they can use it as a tool? Really, that's kind of close to the last step, at least for our framework with it. The first step, we've dabbled in it. We understand. We have a albeit small understanding of what AI is capable of, at least to our level of understanding. Before we go any further with it, it's a matter of, well, based on what we've tested it with, what data don't we have? Where are we not collecting data that would be useful? if I gave it incident reports and it said to a local system so that all of your data is kept there, it's not limiting the AI, but it's not sending your data where you don't want it. So that's kind of like a real big picture, but where we're at is still in that, much like other companies, just slightly beyond the cautious phase.
Sure.
We're into, all right, we're being cautious and we're keeping that at the forefront of our minds, but what can it really do for us? We need to figure that out.
You mentioned, you've mentioned several times about privacy and limitations, and what are some of the, if you don't mind disclosing, what are some of those red lines that in the learning team at Drake Williams, where it's like, okay, this is unacceptable to use in an open source. What are the, and maybe not in maybe Drake Williams. Maybe it's better to say, what would you say? Hey, don't do this in that open source, or like you said before, you would say, don't take the doctor's report exactly. Maybe you want to, rephrase some of the things and use that. But what are the, if you can, what are the things you would not use because it's an open source?
Step one, just make sure you set that framework for your team. But for us, getting one person from each major department on the team so that we could call out exactly that. Well, what about you guys from safety? What should we not put in there? Well, basically, we should really refresh everyone on this team on HIPAA and learn from the basics what already exists. What should we not put out there that you think is okay? Because anything on there, you're not doing. Any documents associated with whatever's called out from existing regulations. And then, so from, specifically safety standpoint, blueprints, drawings, anything associated with it, not putting it in there. If we want to test its abilities on, can it pick up on weld symbols? Can it pick up on hole size and how many holes there are? You can Google a whole bunch of different blueprints that are out there, examples. Upload those images instead. Don't use any of your drawings, especially in some cases where you've had your team sign NDAs. Obviously, anything under the NDA job that has required it is completely off limits. You don't even think about thinking about putting that into an AI system, but really just looking at what already exists in terms of privacy protection. Duplicating that and then taking it a step further for drill down into specifics of your organization.
Yeah, it sounds like any organization that is looking into implementing it or already has, they should probably have like everything you just said right now. Like, here's what you can and cannot do with it.
Along those lines, is there a starting point? Is there a specific podcast or something? If some company is going to be listening to our podcast here, and then thinking, okay, where do I start? Is there a specific website, besides just the ChatGPT, is there some guidelines that somebody that's never thought about this before could say, here are the things that I need to think about first to start that learning team?
Yeah. Especially starting off, because it's a whirlwind. You just search what is generative AI or what is AI, you're going to get millions of different websites that all describe it to a different level. Starting off, you really can't go wrong by going to IBM's website, ibm.com, and they have like a learning tab, or it's a topics tab, and they have great walkthroughs that start with the basic level of understanding of what is AI, how did it even get its start. Referencing things like, Deep Blue, IBM's Deep Blue, the chess, and it gives you a good solid understanding of the basics from a credible source, to where it's not you're reading a random blog post or from a website you don't particularly know. You can probably trust it because anybody can explain AI in their own way, but it's easy to confuse yourself. So IBM's website is a great resource because, IBM's been at the forefront of AI technology, and they have an enterprise AI system, so they touch on not just basic level understanding, but also what does that mean for an organization that might want to integrate it into their systems. Well, hey, let's explain that more, and then if you get to the point, you can reach out to a rep and have them explain further. Microsoft is another great website for their Microsoft.com. Find their Copilot tab. And once again, they have a lot of guides, articles, what have you, that really explain what AI is from basic level understanding, and you can continue going and going and going until you're into super advanced level of understanding. So those two websites for sure, but not forgetting other great websites. I recently found some articles on like MIT's website for management, their Sloan management website, that really are more specifically tailored to like the mitigation of risk when using AI within an organization. Or the Harvard Business Review has a lot of not only great information, but also data to back it up of surveys they've conducted describing what percentage of companies are cautious with AI and haven't integrated it yet or what have you. But those are a great starting point.
And I'm just curious, and if you don't mind sharing, how many, you've got multiple members on your learning committee here, learning team. How are they thinking about AI and how these things might interact together? For instance, safety and quality or safety and production. Have y'all started to look at that any, and how the AI might be able to look at multiple things at once and pull things together?
You kind of need all aspects because all of those things impact one another. And that's really the point we're at now, is trying to figure out we can do anything and everything we want with our own profiles. To your point earlier, like if I ask it a question, I can go deep down a rabbit hole, and holy cow, that's insane what it just did for me. But imagine if I had it do that level of scrutinization and analysis, not just on the one thing I gave it or two things, but simultaneously was doing it with everything else. And to that extent, now you're getting into having to consider integrating it into your organization so that it is able to do that all at once and not just through separate entities.
So that you think that's the future then of how it's going to really be central in companies, and for a fabricator, this is going to be central in taking all of the data and then pulling all of this together instead of in silos of safety or quality or production estimating. It's now going to be able to help everybody.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it might be, every organization has a different structure to it, and it's in that same regard with utilizing AI within that structure, whether it's we have a specific AI model used for helping our employees understand our policies and the healthcare plan. Mm-hmm. That helps in some regard. That is helping our support services team. And then we have an AI model that helps with data analytics of metrics in the safety department. So while these are completely separate and really don't have a whole lot to do with each other, we've integrated AI to be used as an organization, not as a whole organization, but to benefit those departments in the mundane or things that take up all your time when they shouldn't. Have those feed the reports, have those reports then feed into a separate AI model that is branched into. It's not a special AI that covers everything. It's specific and used for report analysis to then generate, instead of having a meeting to determine everything that might be wrong and what the causes are of it, you can have the meeting to come up with solutions instead of, or at least discuss the solutions that maybe AI has already provided for you based on its input from the other systems.
Is there, what do you think is is there a next question or next problem that you're hoping that AI can help solve? Or is it just one of those things where you can't come up with it right now, but when it comes up, obviously you'll start thinking about it in that way?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's no, I think.
I guess if you had any burning questions now, you probably would have already put them in there, right?
No, I love the way you worded it, because I mean, it's like we don't know. Like we can think of our problems. Mm-hmm. And then we can also apply that to, well, can AI solve that? Mm-hmm. No, I don't think they can. That's why there's still problems. But we're thinking of it in our current mindset of we've only dabbled with AI or we only have a basic understanding of it.
Well, yeah, so speaking of that, and just kind of like a general question here, since you obviously work for a steel fabrication company and on the safety side of things. I mean, for other fabricators who are thinking of jumping into this, do you have like a brief list of like the first few uses, the top, like, or maybe the lowest hanging fruit, or the top 3 things that they should start looking to use it for first, if that makes sense? Safety or otherwise?
I mean, there's like, what is it, like, the world is your oyster? Like, there's a crap ton of examples of, hey, if you're first getting into it, try this. Honestly, though, I feel like it's just like learning to a certain degree. We've all got to kind of, we all learn differently, and we all have our own priorities or specifics that we wish it would help us with.
Sure.
Just starting, like, by one, making sure it's okay with your company, or only using it for outside of work purposes, but just starting by getting the app and asking it questions and letting it guide you into what question do I ask next. I mean, literally just asking it that. What question should I ask you next about the information you've given me?
Sure. It sounds like it's like kind of getting into the flow or the mindset of it, and once you get there, it's
right.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's easier.
Because it's, like we said earlier, it's hard to figure out what questions to ask it.
Right.
Don't just think about the questions. Like, just start asking it random things, and you'll see its potential as these conversations start to unravel.
And like you were saying earlier, it's like, don't just say, hi, we're going to use AI to solve our problems. You have to think of it like, okay, what are the problems that we want to solve?
Right.
As opposed to just the blanket sort of approach.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, you can see it as this tool that's going to take people's jobs and put people out of work, but also in some cases, it's not taking a job, it's enhancing your ability to do a job.
Sure.
I had heard it on a podcast recently. It was like, the way he had framed it was, people say AI is going to take your job from you no matter what it is, but really it's the people that understand and use AI, those are the people that are going to take your job, because they're that much more efficient. They understand how to prompt it to get what they need. They don't have to spend a day figuring stuff out. They can spend 30 seconds figuring it out. To a certain degree, right? Because we talked about, you know, accurate information and fact finding, but
It's a skill set that everybody should learn.
absolutely.
And remind me, because getting back to the flowers, how long ago did this journey start for you?
I think it was like early 2023 or mid 2023.
Not that long ago.
Right, no.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that's just it's insane. The improvements that take place and things that happen with this. I mean, that's the difficult part with setting those ethical boundaries and privacy policies, is this technology is improving faster than anyone's ability to come up with the framework for a policy to govern its use. I mean, because it's open source, everyone's coming at it with improvements, and then it all compiles together, and now we have this thing that can do amazing things. When I just finished drafting a policy for it, now I need to revise the whole thing.
Right.
I think that's when it started. I read about it, saw stuff online, and I was like, that's kind of interesting, and then started getting more into it. So it was probably about mid 2023.
Okay. Yeah, that feels about right. Yeah.
To that point, it's interesting that this, you know, I think because this is open source now, and it's available to everybody, at least the 3.5 for free, everybody can do it. Where, you know, previously IBM has had Watson,
Yeah.
and more AI technology in the background, but it wasn't accessible to the masses. And this being open source, now it seems like everybody has access to it, just like Google.
Right. Yeah. Well, Ben and John, thank you very much. I think we all know a lot more than I ever thought I could know in just a short period of time about AI. So this has been our first safety podcast. We're looking forward to producing more of these in the future. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Take care.